Hello dear students, welcome to Biological Science digital class. Dear students, in our previous session we have learnt about the definition of resources, that is natural resources. We have also learnt about the types of resources. We divided the resources into renewable and non-renewable types, and then we have also studied to an extent different types of resources like forest, biodiversity, soil, minerals, etc. Now, in today's session, we will try to understand that if the resources are not utilized properly, if they are exploited, if the resources are not tapped properly, then how human beings' lives get affected, their livelihood gets affected with the help of case studies. So, first once again let us try to look at the definition of natural resources. The materials or substances occurring in nature which are exploited for economic gains are called as natural resources. So, examples, as you can see, forest, water, flora, fauna. Now, as I mentioned that we are going to study about a case study of some of the villages. So, the two villages that we are going to talk about belong to Jangaon district. The names of these two villages are Vanaparthi and Vaddicherla. Let us try to look at the similarities in these two villages. Occupational pattern, it is the same, that is the people, the citizens of these two villages, they have the same type of occupation. Their cropping pattern, the way they try to raise their crops, it is the same. The facilities that they have, infrastructure that they have, whatever kind of help that they get from government, it is almost the same. Then how is it that they are different? How they are different from each other? The difference lies in the availability of a water body which is called as percolation tank, which was found in Vanaparthi. So, because of this single water body over there, there was no scarcity of groundwater in Vanaparthi. So, people of Vanaparthi were blessed to have one tank, one water body with them, which was unfortunately not there in Vaddicherla. So, this presence of mere single water body brought a change in the life of their lives and their livelihood. So, let us try to understand. Actually, it so happened that a survey was conducted in these two villages. The sample size of this survey was 25, that means 25 households having wells who did irrigation through the well. Families of these 25 were considered for the survey. So, people who irrigated their lands with the help of the wells, they were chosen for this particular survey. The sample size was 25. So, 25 families of both the villages were considered over here. So, what is it that they found out in this survey is tabulated here in the form of different tables. So, the first table shows us the area of the land that is irrigated in both the villages, that is Vanaparthi and Vaddicherla. How many number of wells were present in both the villages? So, as you can see over here, Vanaparthi, the total area of land irrigated in acres was 3,791, whereas in Vaddicherla it was 2,970 acres. Now, though Vanaparthi's total irrigated area was more, the number of the wells that were present over there were only 25 at that time, whereas Vaddicherla has 175 wells, that is slightly more than Vanaparthi. So, what happened because of this? If 25% of the area of the land is irrigated using 155 wells, dear students, then you just imagine in Vanaparthi how many wells would be needed to irrigate the complete area, that is 3,791 acres. How many wells would be needed? Similarly, if 15% of the area is irrigated in Vaddicherla and 175 wells are used over here for this, then how many wells do they need, that is to irrigate complete area over here? Let us try to find out the answer. So, the answer for Vanaparthi would be 620 wells, whereas the number of the wells needed in Vaddicherla would be 1,166. 25% of area of the land is irrigated, for which 155 wells are needed. So, for 100% of the area of the land irrigated, how much would be the wells needed? So, 100 into 155, you get 15,500, divided by 25, you get the answer 620 wells. Similarly, do it for even Vaddicherla. So, finally, what you understand over here when you look at this table, the total area of the land irrigated was 25%, this is the total area present, 25% was irrigated, for which only 155 wells were present in Vanaparthi. Now, let us move on to the next. See, when you try to look at this table, you understand that the number of the wells in 𝗬𝗁 were more, but the area irrigated over here was less. Can you guess the reason? As I mentioned earlier, the difference is just because of the presence of one water body, that is called percolation tank. Now, dear students, this is the set of the questions which you have to understand and answer with regards to the table over here, that is table number 1. Now, after 5 years, what was the status? So, what did we learn in the previous slide? We have learnt over here that the total area of the land irrigated was 3,791, and here it is 2,970. But after 5 years, what was the status? The people narrated this particular story about the status. So, 14% decline in the area of the irrigated land in Vanaparthi and 30% area decline in the area of 𝗬𝗁. So, this much of area was declined for agriculture. That means it was not irrigated. We are talking here about percentages. Similarly, small percentage of these wells also dried up. So, around 39% of the wells dried up in Vanaparthi and 68% dried in 𝗬𝗁. Now, when you look at even the crop yield of both Kharif crops and Rabi crops, there was a decline even in the yield. Now, what do we mean by Kharif crop, dear students? Kharif crops are nothing but these are the long-term crops. Crops which are grown during monsoon seasons are called as Kharif crops, whereas Rabi crops are short-term crops or they are winter crops. Usually, Kharif crops need a lot of water, whereas Rabi crops need a bit less water. Now, here when we are talking here about the decline in the percentage of the area irrigated, how much land was finally cultivated or irrigated? Let us try to understand this. Again, suppose if you are talking for 100, it is 14%. So, Vanaparthi had area of 3,791 acres. So, in this 14% has been declined. So, how much is the land totally which was not covered under irrigation? It was 530.74 acres. So, if this one is removed, so finally available land in Vanaparthi was 3,260 acres. Earlier, to begin with, over here we learned that the area irrigated was 3,791 acres, whereas with the decline of 14% over here, it has come down to 3,260 acres. Similarly, even in 𝗬𝗁, there was a decline in the area of irrigated land. So, from 2,700 and above, it has come down to 2,071 acres. Now, why there was decline over here? When you look at these questions, you will understand. When you compare these two villages, what do you understand? What methods would have actually saved the villages? Let's try to look at this particular slide with the questions. By comparing the two villages, find out in which village greater number of the wells dried up. What methods would have saved the wells in the other village? So, when you look at this, we understood that okay, fine, Vanaparthi was at a better stage than 𝗬𝗁, and again the answer is because of percolation tank. Now, which type of farmers, those holding small land holdings or those with large land holdings, are most affected when wells dry up? Usually, when wells dry up, water is essential either for large scale large farmers or small farmers. So, in general, both the types of farmers get affected, but small farmers are more affected. If water resource become scarce, what will affect? Will it affect the nature of soil in areas? Yes, if water is not available, then the quality of the soil definitely changes, because there is no water, you don't find microorganisms, and so the fertility of the soil is lost. As wells dry up, how are people in the area dependent on the well affected? See, livelihood of the people is directly related to water, or it is directly related to groundwater. Now, if water is available, then only irrigation is possible, so growing of the crops is possible. So, these people can get income from their crops. If water is not available, then farmers can't grow the crops, and if they can't grow the crops, they cannot get the income. So, obviously, it will affect their livelihood, and they will have to hunt for the other means. That means they have to change their occupation. In fact, the same thing has happened here with the farmers of both the villages. Why do you think water becomes scarcely mainly in 𝗬𝗁? Water became scarcely in 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 because they were not having any water storage tank with them. They were not having any means to harvest water. So they were entirely dependent on the wells. Again, when you are talking about the well, we are talking about groundwater. So they were dependent on this well water for irrigation. There was no other source of water available for them. There were lot many wells which dried up. Because of this, what happened, slowly people started actually trying to convert the dry wells into bore wells. That means they started installing over there bore wells, tube wells in those particular dry areas. Why? Because people started now extracting, farmers from both the villages started extracting groundwater. They started extracting groundwater, and particularly though water was not available here, they still wanted to grow a paddy crop. It is because paddy has lot of market value. Though paddy needs lot of water and these people were not having water, still they were trying to grow paddy. Paddy has lot of market value and it is a staple food. Rice is a staple food in southern part of India mostly. That is why people buy rice. It has got good value. Now here, let us try to understand to what extent the wells were drilled in order to extract groundwater. So in Vanaparthi, large farmers, they went up to some extracting the water somewhere from below 130 to 200 feet, whereas small farmers dug the wells up to 110 to 180 feet below. Whereas 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 people send their tube wells down below from 90 to 300 feet, and small farmers deep below, they dug from 60 to 200 feet. Now because of this, now what happened? Let us try to understand the area of the land that they irrigated because of the water coming from ground through this tube wells. So only 2.5% of the area was irrigated because of each bore well, whatever they have used. If only 1 acre is irrigated with the help of one bore well, only 2.5% is irrigated, then you just imagine number of the wells needed to irrigate the complete area. It's lot of wells would be used over here or needed. Let us try to understand the expenditure incurred over here because of these bore wells. Installing bore wells is not an easy task because it is an expensive one. So the total expenditure that these people spent, when you try to understand, let us try to look at this. Large farmers spent around 25,000 to 70,000 in Vanaparthi, whereas small farmers somewhere between 25,000 to 65,000. In 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 people, large farmers spent around 22,000 to 50,000 and small farmers 20 to 45,000. So this was the amount that they spent in order to install bore wells. Again here students, there is a list of the questions which you can try to understand and answer them on your own. Now let us try to understand the income that these people got because of growing these crops and selling the crops. We understood over here in the previous slide that they have spent somewhere around 25,000 to 70 or 60,000 in order to install bore wells, to dig water, to extract groundwater. But what about the income that they have earned? In Vanaparthi, people could get only 25,000, that is large farmers could get 25,100 rupees, whereas small farmers it is 29,000, and 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 it is around 24,000, small farmers around 22,000. So let us try to look at the income that they received from the crops that they grew. So paddy, kharif season, it was 8,200 rupees that they could get, and the other crops over here being cotton, gingerly. So see, small farmers, when you try to understand this table, small farmers could gain more when they try to grow cotton crop, whereas other farmers, large and small scale farmers from 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧, they benefited by growing paddy, whereas small farmers from Vanaparthi, they found growing of the cotton was more beneficial. Because of no water facility available here, these people suffered a lot. So finally, what we can understand when you look at these two villages is that Vanaparthi was having one percolation tank, because of which they were slightly at a better edge, in better condition in growing the crops and getting their income. But 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 had no such tank, so they had to entirely depend on from wells to irrigate. So looking at their problems, there is one voluntary organization which is called, which is a public trust called as Center for World Solidarity. This is situated at Secunderabad. These people intervened and they started encouraging these people and started giving them guidance how to growing of the crops, water sharing facility, how to go about even utilizing micro irrigation techniques which would help them. Because of the help that these villagers got from this particular trust, there was a change in their lifestyle. So this is drip irrigation, and this one is sprinkler water system used to irrigate crops. Now dear students, let us try to understand the total amount of the water that is present actually on planet Earth. We know that 97% of the water is available in the form of oceans and seas, that is marine water, which is not of any help to us when it comes to drinking. Whereas if you are talking about the drinking water or the fresh water, that the percentage of water is 2.5 to 2.75. Again of this, 1.75 to 2% is frozen ice, that is in the form of the ice glaciers present in the polar regions and in the Himalayas. So fresh groundwater, that is water that is present underground, it is 0.7 to 0.8%, and the surface water percentage is 0.01. Surface water means we are talking here about the water that is present in lakes, rivers, streams, etc. That is only 0.01%. So the total amount of the water that we actually use for drinking or for irrigation purpose is the one that is coming from this groundwater and surface water. This is very less percentage. Though the percentage is very less, still if we use this water judiciously and then hand it over to future generation also, all these water resources. Dear students, now let us try to understand another case study. This is of a village called Kottapalli. Now, where is this village situated? Kottapalli is situated in, it was in Rangareddy district in United Andhra Pradesh in Yacharam Mandal. Now, what about the characteristic features of this particular village? This particular village had lot of dry land area when compared to irrigated area. People are uneducated over there. It was very difficult to find labor, that is human resource, for working in the fields, and they used lot of pesticides and fertilizers to grow their crops. Their income was very less because the yield was very less, and above all they did not have even a single water harvesting structure. So they were going through tough time. At that particular moment, it was 𝗖𝗍 which came to their rescue. What is this 𝗖𝗍? 𝗖𝗍 is actually a non-profit, non-political organization. Its full form is International Crop Research Institute for Semi-Arid Tropics. So these people converted the grey area of Kottapalli into green area. Now, where is this 𝗖𝗍 located? 𝗖𝗍 is located, its headquarters is at Patancheru. They do agricultural research for the development of how dry areas push people towards poverty, starvation and hunger. So these people try to address those people and those problems. These people also started one initiative in the year 2013 called as smart food. That is, they try to supply good food that is good for farmers, for planet and for human beings also. So what did these people do, community people do over here? They provided help, and this help was divided into two types or two categories: community based intervention, that is community based help, and individually farmers based help. So for the entire benefit of community there, to all the villagers, for all the villagers, they constructed 14 water storage structure with the capacity of 300 to 2000 cubic meter. In the same way, they constructed 60 mini percolation tanks, and field bunding was done on 38 hectares. So what let us try to understand. I am sure you understood that structures means we are talking here about the structure to store water. We will see what is mini percolation tank, and let us try to understand first field bunding. Dear students, any land which has got a slope of 5 degrees, 5%, we find that these land has got counter lines. So what are counter lines? Counter lines are imaginary lines which actually join places of equal height. Even here also Kottapalli has these counter lines. So what is done along these counter lines is that field bunding is done. So what is bund? Bund is nothing but it is a barrier made up of earth, or they are called as earthen dams, so that which is used to stop the flow of water. So along the counter lines, so bunds were constructed, and on this plants were planted. So this was done on 38 hectares of land. In the same way, now if you talk about individually what did they do to help farmers. So there were 4 or 5 techniques adopted by them. First one is called as broad bed furrow. What is broad bed furrow? You know what are actually furrows? Furrow is a parallel channel of water, canals which carry water in the fields. In any crop area you find ridges on which the plants are grown, and then parallel to that you find a canal which carries water, which is called as a furrow. So these people suggested that the ridge that is there over there, it should be broad. That means it is a raised land platform. Now what happens, because of this raised land platform, instead of one row of crop you will have around 3 to 4 rows of crops. So this raised land platform will help the farmers so that they can go with fertilizer application or weeding operation. It is very easily done. Not only that, the raised platform also helps to store water, moisture. So it is very helpful even for the aeration of the crops. So they were asked to adopt this system. Apart from this, on the boundaries of all the crops or on the field bunds, they were asked to specially grow leguminous plant called as Gliricidia. So because this is leguminous plants, it helps in conversion of atmospheric nitrogen into salts and supply that in the form of fertilizers to the soil. Now the third and the fourth techniques that they were asked to follow is once again joint water utilization, and fourth one is utilization of micro irrigation technique. So what are micro irrigation technique? As I mentioned earlier, sprinkler water system and drip water irrigation. These two are considered as micro irrigation technique. So if drip water irrigation is used, around 70% of the water can be saved, but unfortunately only 2% of the land is cultivated using this. So these were some of the techniques used by small farmers so that they could get benefit. Now because of all the techniques that these farmers adapted, they could get 50 kg more of maize crop and 250 kg more of PGNP, that is tur dal. Now dear students, we understood what are counter lines. So let us try to understand where it was used further in Kottapalli village. Now wherever waste land was there around a roadside or around canals, nalas, anywhere around, wherever this counter lines were present, around this along this counter lines, trenches were dug. Counter trenches were made. So counter trenches means we are talking about digging of the pits around the counter lines. So that water could, whenever it rains, water could stop over here in these trenches, it could get filled up and that water would percolate down. So around these counter trenches, even saplings were planted. So the saplings which were planted were fruit saplings which did not need lot of human maintenance from human side. So 2,500 saplings of fruit plants, teak, wood, custard apples were planted. So wherever wasteland was present, all these plants were planted. In the same way, dear students, Sri Ram Sagar project, it is situated, it is built around river Godavari. This is also called as Pochampadu project. So from here, water is supplied to Warangal, Khammam, Karimnagar district. This is a lifeline of farmers in Telangana. So water is supplied through 3 different canals, one of them being Lakshmi Canal. But along this Lakshmi Canal, there were around 28 wells which were all dried up. So some people voluntarily they came forward and they formed groups which are called as self-help groups, and they started trying to take care of these wells and try to recharge the groundwater in them so that farmers could be benefited from that. Dear students, this is a slide which shows you the sources of water under irrigation. So when you look at this diagram, pie diagram, you understand that green color over here represents groundwater. So farmers depend a lot on this groundwater for irrigation. Followed by this is this yellow color area, means the land is irrigated from the water coming from canals. So pink stands for the water coming from tanks. Similarly, small other area from this other sources. Dear students, in a survey conducted in 2004, it was said that Telangana and Andhra Pradesh had water of 3,814 TMC, that is 1000 million cubic feet. And this is how the water is being utilized in different areas. But in the year 2025, 39,899 TMC. you just imagine from where we'll get this much of extra water for all our usage of water in different areas, that is for domestic usage, irrigation, industries, generation of power. So we need lot of water in future. That means we have to conserve water, take steps towards conservation of water. United Nations Development Program, unit of United Nations Organization, similarly FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization, another unit of United Nations organizations. What did they say about consumption of water or availability of water? UNDP said that if the annual supply of the water per individual, if it falls below 1700 cubic meter, then that area would face water scarcity. Similarly, FAO said that by 2025, around 1.8 billion of people would get affected, would face water scarcity. Dear students, you have a small activity here to understand yourself how water is utilized and misused or used by people. So for this, you just need to contact 5 different families. So prepare a questionnaire, go and try to understand what are the different sources of water that they have, from where they get water, how much is the water that they use per day, whether the water is cycled, recycled or not. You will get an idea how people try to use water or they are not using it properly. So previously we discussed percolation tank. So percolation tank over here is actually an artificial water body. The land over here which is submerged, it has got actually the ability to percolate water down, because it is a bed which is intact and consistent, made up of several layers of sand, gravel, silt, loam, clay. Because of this, whatever water is present, it percolates down, so groundwater gets recharged. Not only this, because of percolation tank, even the wells which are close by can also get recharged through pipes. In the same way, we can also store water and use it, that is through rainwater harvesting. So what is rainwater harvesting? It is collection of the rainwater and storing it. There are different methods being adopted over here. We can just collect rainwater in tanks and use it for our daily purpose. Especially rainwater harvesting also deals up with collection of the rooftop water. That means whatever water falls on the terrace, that water can be collected in tanks and it can be sent down underground. Even rainwater directly can be sent down to any aquifer, so that the groundwater gets recharged. If at all we can collect rainwater and save, then we can definitely get lot of water for our usage. Same way, dear students, you should also know what is a soak pit. You know, wherever actually drainage facility is present, their water from all the families, their household is being taken away through the drainage pipelines. But wherever drainage pipelines are not present, there the household water, that is effluent water, is being disposed of wherever it is possible. But this is not a good sign, because wherever drainage water gets accumulated, there you find that becomes a breeding ground for mosquitoes and germs, and also contamination of that particular ground and water. Instead, people can go with the construction of soak pits. So what is a soak pit? It is a pit which is constructed according to the household water facility, the quantity that comes in. So it is a pit which is dug. In the center of the pit, there is actually a structure which is a cylindrical structure which is being placed. This cylindrical structure can be either a drum made up of pipe or a cement structure also. Then all around it, stones, gravel, sand, it is being filled up in different layers. This cylindrical structure has got holes on the side. This is connected to a place, to the water that comes out from the house. So water that, and it is, the soak pit is totally covered. Water coming from the house, it gets filled up in the soak pit. Then slowly water gets filtered and it goes deep down, and this water can be again extracted through bore wells and can be used for irrigation. So we can make use of soak pits in order to store water. So dear students, what did we learn in today's lesson? We have understood that resources are very precious. We have to use them judiciously. Kottapalli stands as an example and as to how we can store water, and then how we can store water and use it properly. So at the same time, we can also learn methods of collection of rainwater, that is rainwater harvesting, and how counter trenches and counter bunding can be useful to us. So thank you very much, dear students. For better understanding, please visit SCRT website, download the worksheets and answer them, and for any doubts, contact your teacher. Thank you very much.